I always thought the way I would die was something would happen to me and I would rather die than call 911. And actually it kind of concerned me, like, what if it were my kids? What if something happened to one of my kids? Would I rather, I don't want to say I'd rather my child die than I make a phone call, but I mean, would I be able to make a phone call if, you know, my child needed help or something, or I needed help? If it was me, I probably would have let myself die, you know? So that's how bad it is to make phone calls. Well, I think I'm a little different than most people because I didn't start stuttering until I was almost 18. I started the summer before I went to college. And so I always was a little envious of people who stuttered growing up because I figured they at least had some support in school or something. But I didn't have that. So I kind of had to learn how to be a stutterer sort of overnight almost without any support. And so I went to college and I kind of learned how to be a stutterer in college and was so covert that I'm sure most of my college friends do not know that I stuttered. I doubt most of my professors know that I stuttered, except for the ones I told. And I was actually valedictorian of my college. They told me about a week before graduation I was going to be valedictorian. And that was a nervous week. But it all turned out okay because, you know, the avoidance reduction thing, I almost had to force myself to go through that in that week because I didn't think there was any way I could get up in front of whatever 1,000 people or whatever it was and give a valedictory address, and I knew it wouldn't work. And so I had to kind of let go. I had to accept that I couldn't do it. It was just so draining every day. I set my class schedule based upon what classes I wouldn't have to talk in. That was my main thing. So I don't know whether I wanted to be a history major, but I didn't have to talk in the history classes. So that's what I did. I could speak if it was a small class. I remember I took a lot of English classes and some of them were just, say, 5 students. It was a really small class. And I remember doing a report, an oral report in one of those, and I was okay there. But no, I was literally, my class schedule was what do I not have to speak in for this semester coming up? And that was what I took. And it was kind of crazy. And I did sometimes skip classes if I thought I might have to speak in them. So, but I did sometimes also tell the teachers. I had one particular philosophy class where the teacher would call on people to answer, and I told him, you know, if you call on me and I don't have an answer, it's not because I didn't do the reading or I don't know the answer, it's that I can't say it. So I guess when I was valedictorian, it proved that I did know the answer. But yeah, it was very, very tough, very, very tough. Yeah. And it was funny, the day after I gave my valedictory address, I had to make a phone call, and I had a horrible time doing it. And the valedictory address actually went very well because I just gave up on it, you know, and didn't hope for the best. I always think that's the most important thing. Don't hope for the best. Just accept whatever comes, then you'll be okay. Well, first off, if I could have all phones destroyed, I would have done that. But yeah, boy, the phone is the worst because obviously no one can see you and, you know, there's no body language and, you know, there's no nonverbal communication. So there were definitely, in my work, I'd have sort of phases I'd go through. Some phases where I couldn't answer the phone. Some phases where I couldn't make phone calls. And so in the non-answering phases, I would just let the phone ring and whatever, and people wondered why I wasn't answering my phone, but what could you do? And then in my non-calling phases, I would go literally for years without making phone calls. And a lot of this was, sometimes this was kind of a little bit before you could use email and things like that more than you can do now, or you can do it less than you can do now. But I wouldn't return anybody's phone calls. And sometimes people were a little unhappy with that because they'd call me back and I'd speak with them if I was able to answer the phone during that phase. So, but that's one of the things that avoidance reduction therapy really did for me is let me make phone calls. And it's incredible what a difference that makes in your life. It's incredible. I used to, during the phase I could answer calls but not make calls, I didn't want to leave my office. Because if I left my office for 10 minutes, I might get a voicemail and I'd have to do something about it. And it's incredible how freeing it is now. I can go to my office, it doesn't matter. And if I come back to my office, there's a voicemail, I will make the phone call back. I literally don't even think about it. It's not that I have to say to myself, okay, you can do it. Yeah, okay. No, I don't even think about it. I just make the phone call. And at the end of the phone call, generally, I couldn't even tell you if I stuttered. I might have and I might not have, and I wouldn't even remember. And the difference that makes in your life is pretty amazing. I mean, I would look at my calendar, look at my day, look at my week, look at my month, look at my year, look at my decade, and try to come up with all the speaking situations that might come up during that time. I literally, on the day that my daughter was born, I started worrying about having to give a speech at her wedding, which I did eventually do, but I worried about that. She got married about 23, 24. So that was 23 or 24 years of worrying about giving a speech at her wedding. And I mean, the day she got engaged, that was bad for me too. Because then it's like, okay, start the countdown, folks. You got to do something now. And since she was my oldest, and you know, I felt like I should probably try to do that. So, but again, that was a thing where I didn't think I could really do it. And this was before I actually started coming to avoidance reduction therapy. And I watched some things online, people giving some talks in which they stuttered. It really helped me a lot because I thought, well, maybe, you know, maybe it could be done. And maybe even if I stutter, it would be okay. And so I did that and it was okay, but I guess that's almost the theme of life, I think. That things aren't as bad as you think they're going to be. And even if they're the worst, you can accept that. If you can accept it, then it doesn't control you. So that's what I've kind of learned over time, but coming to therapy has really reinforced that. What I learned going through avoidance reduction therapy was there's no actual can't. There's a not willing to. It's not that I can't do that, it's that I'm not willing to do that. It's not that I can't make that phone call and stutter while doing it, it's that I'm not willing to do that. And so the thing that avoidance reduction therapy helped me was being willing to do it. And when I started the therapy, I started making phone calls, and they were pretty much as bad as I thought they would be. I would call someone up and say, hello, this is Kevin Clark, returning your call, or something like that, maybe worse than that. And I did that enough times that I realized it wasn't going to kill me. And oddly enough, at the end of the phone call, after I had given the client whatever information they wanted, they thanked me. Well, if they thanked me, then I did okay with it, right? Because I gave them the information that they wanted. And so even if I stuttered, it didn't matter to them, and it didn't have to matter to me. And that's what put me over the hump of being able to do that and not even think about it. Literally not even think about it. If I had 10 calls on my phone and I have to make Monday morning, I would just make them one after the other. And I wouldn't even think about whether it'd be a problem. I would just do it. And I might stutter and I might not, but it wouldn't matter. At a certain point in work, I started not going to meetings. And I thought, I can't really keep this up. I can't really do this for the rest of my life. Something has got to change here. And I guess when you know you can't keep on the same path, then you look for something else. And that's really what brought me to it. I couldn't retire, I didn't have enough money. But yeah.
I didn't either.
Yeah, it's like you're willing to try anything if it's the only thing. And that was kind of how I felt about it. I didn't like the idea really of avoidance reduction therapy because it seems like a kind of a hard thing to do. But when you're really at the bottom and you really have nowhere to go, you're willing to kind of do anything that, you know, gives you the possibility of changing. What partly exhausted me was that my stuttering was the only thing I remembered at the end of the day. That I never had a high number of disfluencies. I actually think I might have had fewer than average disfluencies. That as I went through the day, because I was so focused on my speech and other people were just talking, they probably had more disfluencies than I did. But I remembered only the disfluencies. So if I had gone through the day and I had one disfluency all day, that's the only thing I'd remember for the day. And so that's part of the embarrassment, the shame, and just like Frank was saying, human beings can speak. It doesn't take much. I'm supposed to be a competent person here. I can't do a thing that a 3-year-old can do, or someone with no education whatsoever, or the least competent person in the world basically is more competent than I am. And that was pretty tough. It was kind of interesting. I reconnected with an employee who'd worked at my business after he'd been gone for like 5 years. And we were talking about something, I don't know what it was. And whatever it was, I thought stuttering was a good analogy of what it was. And so I happened to mention it, just in passing, not, I'm a stutterer, by the way, but just, you know, as a stutterer, you know, and said something. He's like, you stutter? And I'm like, well, yes. He said, I didn't have any idea. And I said, well, let me tell you, you worked at the business for however long. Every single conversation I had with you, every time I ever talked to you, and every word I ever said to you, I worried about. Every time. And he's like, I had no idea. And that's what it is. That's what we're doing on our end. Worrying about every single word. And as you said, 3 sentences down. You know, we're there already. And the other people don't know anything about it. And now, honestly, whenever I speak to anyone at work, I never even think about stuttering. I could literally go the entire day and never think a single time about stuttering. And it's like, the change that makes in your life is unbelievable. So, I don't want to cry. I promised myself I wouldn't cry. But yeah, it's an incredible difference. The first time I went to an NSA conference, we were in Phoenix, and there was a free night. And so I did the thing that I'd done with another program, which was you go to the mall and talk at all the stores, and you do it perfectly, you don't stutter at all. And so I did this, and then I thought to myself, you know, I had been doing this the wrong way, exactly the wrong way, that I should have gone to all these stores and stuttered. That would have been so much better for me. And I didn't actually do that, but that's what kind of started me on the way. At that first Phoenix conference I went to the avoidance reduction therapy session, and I forget who all it was, but I thought to myself, wow, I'm very impressed with them. There's no way I would ever get up at a session like this and do that. And so the next year, I don't know if I talked to you after that, I may have. I went to Baltimore the next year, and when I watched the session there, and I thought, wow, I wish I were up there doing that. And that was the year that I came and talked to you and started. And the next year, I was up there doing that. And so, yeah, it's like you can, it's what you're willing to do. What are you willing to go through to really fix things? Not to cure yourself, but to fix the problem, you know? And if you're willing to put the work in, you are still going to stutter. I definitely stutter, but it doesn't have to control you. You don't have to be afraid all the time. And the point of stuttering therapy, I think, is to let people lead a happy life, not to have fewer disfluencies. So as long as you do that, then it's successful. The disfluencies have nothing to do with stuttering at all. Literally nothing. Because the disfluencies are not the problem, at least for a covert stutterer. I could have gone through an entire day and not had a single disfluency, and I would have still been a stutterer, and it had a huge life impact on me. I remember I had a son who was, I don't know, 6 or 7 years old, and he started repeating a lot of sounds. But he wasn't a stutterer. I could tell he wasn't, because I was. And he would repeat these sounds, but he was talking. He didn't know he was doing it. And a while into this, he was in a play, and he just did the play. And I thought, if he were a stutterer, he would never do that play. So his stuttering, or no, not his stuttering, his disfluencies were not stuttering. And I don't know, it's like if you took poison and it made your hair fall out, and you say the problem is your hair falling out. That's not the problem. The problem is the poison. And it's the same with stuttering disfluencies. I really think disfluencies have nothing to do with stuttering. Stuttering is in your mind, it's not in your mouth. So I think counting disfluencies would tell you nothing. I mean, it would have said I wasn't a stutterer, but I was a stutterer. I went, not as a child, but as an adult, I went through a fluency shaping program, and it did help. In fact, I do credit it with giving me the idea that I could speak and not have to live this way that I didn't want to live. So even though it wasn't a cure, it gave me an idea that there was a possibility of a cure. So I think it did help me to some extent. But I think, and there are some tools, I don't want to call them tricks because they're not exactly tricks. It's like more slowing down a little bit if you're caught on a sound or something like that. But I feel like it's okay to do some of these fluency shaping as long as you're willing to stutter. So if I'm wanting to say the word national and I'm caught on it, sometimes you get in a little bit of a loop and you're going, you can step back a little bit and say, okay, just a little slower, national. And so, but that's only okay if you're willing to stutter, if you're willing to be seen as a stutterer. If you're not willing to be seen as a stutterer, it will never help you because you'll still be worried about it in your mind. And if you're not worried about it, I think you can use it. And I think it could help you be a little more fluent if that's what you want to do in certain situations. But that can't be the primary goal. It could just be something you can add on. I was reading this book, I think it's called War or something, but it was about soldiers, and Frank probably knows more about this than I do, but I was saying that, if you've got a soldier and they're doing this hike or whatever, the first time they think, I can't go on or I can't do it, they're nowhere near the limit of what they can do. And I think my problem with stuttering was I underestimated myself and I didn't realize that I had a lot more strength than I thought. And I thought my limit was a lot less than it was. And so my problem was I wasn't willing to go far enough. I was stopping at a certain point and saying, I am not strong enough to do that. And once you start doing it, you realize you are strong enough to do it. And also it's not as bad as you thought it was going to be. But when you first get to the limit and you say you can't go on, you can go on. You can go past that. And so for me, it almost wasn't as much self-acceptance. It's just self-knowledge. Just being able to understand myself better in that way. So I write sometimes for some online publications. And so a radio host read one of the articles I wrote. And she contacted me and she said she wanted to have me on her radio show. And it was going to be me and the radio interviewer for an hour. Just, me talking basically and answering her questions. And that's something I would have never done. Never in a million years. So, but I was in word introduction therapy and I have to say yes to everything. So I told her, I do stutter, but I'm happy to come on and do the show with you. So she said, okay, we'll do it. And one nice thing was recorded, it wasn't live, so I figured it was really horrible. They just throw it out. But so she said, okay, we'll do it. And so we got a day set up. And of course, I was a little nervous, I must say, going into it. And I had talked to some other people who have done similar things and said, what do you suggest? And the thing that they said was, again, the content. Be very sure of your content. So I made sure I knew my content and I was ready to go with it. And so we did it. And I stuttered quite a bit throughout the interview. And at the end, she was like, wow, that was great. That was a great show. And I wasn't really sure if that was a great show, but she liked it. So I knew it was going to be broadcast, but then it was going to be online on the radio website, which of course nothing goes away on the internet forever. And I thought, okay, I did the interview, but I am never going to listen to it. After about a month, I thought, you know what? I think I will listen to it. And I listened to the interview, and I got to say, I was pretty proud of it because I said everything I wanted to say. I stuttered openly. And we weren't mainly talking about stuttering. This is on a different topic entirely. She said, well, maybe I'll bring up the stuttering at some point. And she did, and it was a little bit. But it's mostly on other things entirely. And I just stuttered. And I didn't say, by the way, I'm a stutterer or anything like that. I just stuttered. But I said everything. I got all my content in. And I think I listened to it 2 or 3 times. I liked it so much. And I really just thought, this is a good thing. This is a good thing to have out there. And I wasn't embarrassed or ashamed that it was out there of me stuttering. And I even told all my friends and family, here, it's online. You can go listen to this. And so not only did I do the interview, not only, was I okay on it, but I made sure to tell people who know me about it too. People who didn't even know I stuttered. It didn't bother me at all that I stuttered. And I stuttered. I didn't not stutter. There's no one who listened to it and thought, oh, not a stutterer. No. They all thought stutterer, but it was okay. And I enjoyed it, and I'm glad I did it.